As 2022 has come to an end, I've decided that I should try making a video all by myself. It was hell. The only application I've been using to edit the video was iMovie, and only when I began to edit did I realize that it wouldn't allow me to put multiple images in a single frame. And I also didn't know how to put in effects and everything. So I'm sorry, but the visual of this video may be a bit boring to your taste. But anyway, welcome everyone, this is Yuma Roller, and you might have heard of me if you've been in the Battle Spirits community for a while. Definitely not trying to act like I'm famous here. As a proper introduction, I'm the current admin of the unofficial English Battle Spirits wiki, as well as being an assistant for the channel Tea Time Gaming, operated by my friend Theo, who also likes to talk about Battle Spirits, and was very salty that Battle Spirits Saga didn't pick him for sponsorship. As the title has displayed, this is a video where I talk about my 10 most favorite decks in Battle Spirits that were viable in 2022. At first, I was going to make a video of decks released in 2022, but then I thought about Amaterasu getting reprinted in 2022 despite being a deck in 2020, and then how Parvati still received support even though her deck was technically released in 2021, and so I decided, fuck it, any deck that was still seen in the tournament environment in 2022 would be considered in the criteria. Someone got bored and brought Purple White Rush from the Sword Ice era? Sure. A Diva Rush deck that was technically built in the Ultimate era still counts. All those control decks that technically had existed since the dawn of the game because it really just each color throwing all their best cards into one deck? Absolutely. I can't even skip them because they've been some of the top and most broken decks in the meta as well. And so, here are 10 decks which have caught my attention while I was playing the game in 2022. Do note that there's no ranking, and I'm simply listing out the decks in a random order. The decks may also be discussed as if they were still at the peak of their time, meaning if, for example, I talk about Purple Primal, I'll talk about the version which Gamashard was still unbanned. Spoiler alert, Purple Primal is not on the list. So starting off, we have the Kronos family, which had caught my attention ever since they were first introduced in ST55, even though during that time, there were only 2 Kronos cards and neither of them were really about manipulating time, except for the brief mention in the lore that Lolo was borrowing Chrono Dragon to time travel. Just looking at the name, which was a combination of time and crown in kanji, I already knew that Bandai was planning something bigger. And I definitely don't mean how Chrono Dragon became one of the most broken cards in the game for the 2 life burns. It honestly surprised me that Bandai split up the 2 waves of support with a time gap of 4 main sets, which was about a year time, and they even attempted to separate the 2 waves of support because they decided that Chrono Dragon was too broken and the new version of Kronos deck shouldn't have any kind of support involving it, and that in turn hindered the support for Groundwalker Kronos, the main Groundwalker of the deck. Nonetheless, I really appreciated the fact that they stuck to the theme of time manipulation, and the deck structure was honestly one of the most unique decks in the game history. With the base color being blue, the deck made use of the hand-filtering nature of the color, allowing the player to recycle cards from the trash to the deck, which basically meant that the deck would never lose from deck out. It was also one of the few decks which actually focused on skipping steps and turns. Lombardia was already threatening enough by skipping the opposing main step, but then we also had Shin Kronos, which could skip the entire opposing turn, essentially giving the user an extra turn. However, as mentioned before, the family support was a bit lackluster, with how the first wave technically focused on Blue Primal, and then the second wave completely got rid of that family and focused on pure Kronos instead. The deck had a solid endgame tactic, but it struggled to reach that stage. Many players have come up with different ways to cover up the weakness. Some simply put in more defensive cards, such as Bloodset Blade, which could also help boosting counters, or Overstar, which could help dragging the game. Some decided to stick to the Primal version of the deck, using only Kronos cards that also had the Primal family, with the addition of the Groundwalker Kronos, the Godseeker, and Shin Kronos. Unfortunately, despite the deck's struggle to remain in the meta, it got nerfed further after Shin Kronos was banned due to the abuse of its turn-skipping ability in other decks after the contract cards were introduced. Right now, the deck had gone back to using Lombardia as the main finisher, and while Lombardia is in no way bad, having one extra win condition gone really hurts the deck. With Kronos being dead in the lore, there's also almost no chance for the family to receive further support. The second deck on the list is the Unifooting deck from the Evangelion series. While the deck was already introduced in CB21 back in December 2021, it didn't really pique my interest until its second wave of support in CB23. The various new cards had made the deck stabler than when it was first released, and finally it had a chance to compete in the meta. Just like the Kronos deck, the Unifooting deck had two very solid win conditions, but its problem was reaching that stage. The deck inherently lent towards the control style if not mid-range. It needed the time to set up, with how the card Evangelion Unifooting required 4 specific Braves and being at level 3 for maximum potential. And then the new X-Rare for the deck, Evangelion Unifooting, the Spirit of Longinus, also required at least the presence of the Groundwalker Nessus Ikari for an easier summon. As shown in many YouTube videos, the deck always had enough firepower, but they always got finished before they could fire out that power. However, once you could reach the end stage of the deck, I would even use the word orgasmic to describe the process. With the introduction of additional impact, after you play the card, everything else for the rest of the game would be no cost for you. Well, purple cards only, but you get what I mean. That means you could easily stack the 4 Braves onto Evangelion Unifooting. It's always been a wonder to see a spirit with 4 Braves on top of it. It felt like I was playing Exodia. And then if you had enough spirits in hand, you could also repeatedly summon the spirits to call charge Ikari, leveling him up to level 2. When you were attacked with Evangelion Unifooting, there would be 6 symbols charging at the opponent while discarding 4 cards from their hand. And then Gendo would add to the burn by activating his Grand Field, sending 3 cards each from the opposing reserve and the life to the void. It may not be the best deck to use in the meta, but it's a very rewarding deck to use. The third deck on the list is also from the Evangelion series and is the Angel deck. I don't normally like Mule decks because I always feel that the playstyle is very linear. You focus on setting up your board, hindering your opponent with various control tactics, and then boom, Castle Golem, Titus El Grande, Triana, Triton Loop, and then your opponent's deck would be gone in one turn. For a very long time, Mule decks in Battle Spirits have been about OTK. But it was different for the Angel deck. I mean, technically the Poseidon deck was doing roughly the same thing, but I didn't really grow any attachment to it, probably because it was lacking flavors in terms of the lore. And it was pretty formulated considering it was simply just another Groundwalker deck back in the God Athens era, which was all about summoning your Godseeker, searching for the Groundwalker, stalling, and then summoning your avatar to end the game. Banishing the deck was an interesting mechanic, but to me it was no different to milling normally, except that it could dodge all the anti-mill effects because it was banishing the deck, not discarding. Back to the Angel deck, I think what really got my interest at first wasn't the milling, but rather its chain summoning mechanic. It sounds like I'm talking about Yu-Gi-Oh!, and I know there isn't such a thing as chain summon in Battle Spirits. I'm just summarizing it this way for easier understanding. If you know the Angel deck, then you know that what I mean is really the idea where you have to summon the angels one by one, not to mention in the correct order. So like, you can only summon the 5th angel off the 4th angel leaving the field, and then the 6th angel off the 5th angel leaving the field, etc. Bandai was absolutely dedicated to this, giving no reductions to any of the angel cards and no symbols to any blue Nessuses for the deck. Meaning, you can't even cheat them out by simply paying the cost because most of them are like cost 5 or above. It was a fun mechanic, it would work, but it also created the biggest problem for the deck. Because of how you couldn't summon the cards unless another spirit was removed from the field, they were usually stuck in your hand. And if you couldn't join to the angel of the lower ranks, your angels of the higher ranks would simply be unplayable. Often you'll be finished by the opponent before your board would even have anything. Luckily, Bandai acknowledged the problem and fastly improved it in CB23. Almost every new Angel card in CB23 will be added to the deck. The most impactful card among the new wave of support had to be the Magic card. I can't believe me, the first impostor, has fallen to become the number 13 apostle. Or in Japanese, Masaka dai ichi shito no boku ga 13番目の人に落とされるとは. Sorry, I really love pronouncing these card names in Japanese. Anyway, the Magic vastly improved the deck's mobility. Not only did it serve as a hand-filtering Magic card, it also allowed you to skip the hardcore chain summon, and you could legit jump from the 4th Angel to the 10th Angel, as long as you had a 9th Angel in trash to fulfill the condition. And then there was also 6th Angel attack mode, which was the best defense for the deck, considering that it could destroy any spirits up to a total cost of 10 and also resetting itself, meaning if the opponents couldn't summon anything bigger or have burst effect lock effects, they couldn't touch your life at all. And even if they have any of those things, there's also second impact to literally nuke the whole board. As mentioned before, I didn't find Poseidon interesting mainly due to the lack of flavors, but the Angels have fulfilled that criteria for me. I immediately turned to watch the Evangelion series when Battle Spirits announced the collaboration, and I fell in love with the series. As such, I really appreciate the references which the card designers have put for the Angel cards. Besides the obvious reference to the chain summon, the win condition of milling is perfect for the deck, considering how in the series the Angels were slowly destroying Tokyo 3 and the Nerf headquarters bit by bit, represented by how they chip away the opposing deck bit by bit. While the simple removal has been a main mechanic for mill decks, so to avoid triggering any effects upon reducing the opposing life, I also see it as an in-universe reference, representing how the Angels have a very linear motive. Their only reason for attack was solely to eliminate humanity and nothing else. In game, this is represented by their win condition being only milling. I can also talk about the mass destruction effects from the aforementioned 6th Angel attack mode and second impact, but let's move on before this gets too long.
準備が整い次第。貴様！カルタ様のお話を最後までお聞きに。そんな。ミカお前。
The fourth deck is yet another collaboration deck, but this time it's Tekkadan from the series Mobile Suit Gundam Iron Blood Orphans. The support was long overdue ever since its first release in CB16 back in February 2021. But when the support did finally come, even with the long time gap, Bandai didn't disappoint us. Especially with the introduction of the new Groundwalker Kudelia and Atra, the new support provided more draws, which the deck was lacking as a purple deck, as well as giving more removal options, and just like the Kronos deck, introducing the recycling mechanic to the deck. Well, to be fair, I like the deck mainly because I really like the anime series, but the deck itself is also pretty fun to play. While it can also recycle cards from trash back to the deck like Kronos, I think Tekkadan requires more thought in what to return. Being purple, the deck also manipulates the trash a lot, meaning often there are cards which you'd rather keep in the trash so that you can return them directly back to hand or summon them onto the field. Even though the deck is mainly limited to only Tekkadan family cards, it still has a fair amount of choices in dealing with the opponent and winning the game. It has core amount destruction effects, depletion effects, and anti-end attack step effects, and... oh wait, I think that's it. Okay, to be fair, there's still a lot of effects which the deck has. Sure, it doesn't have a lot of piercing effects, but at the end, not every deck should have those, or else you're gonna get something like this. And really, the lack of all-rounded responses is what I like about this deck. It really makes me think through every attack and every effect I activate, because the deck is always in such a tight position that one wrong move can lead to a loss. It really feels like the style of Tekkadan, where they bet on everything in hope that it works out. and it's also obviously the feeling which the designers were going for, considering how we got Gundam Barbatos Lupus Rex Final Battle, which would literally banish 5 cards from your own deck on every attack, and even require you to banish 13 of your own cards to get 2 life burns at the end of battle. It's the very definition of do or die. My 5th choice is yet another purple deck, Dionysus and his zombie army. I know that it's actually a deck from back in 2020, and it's true that Dionysus didn't actually receive any official support after the Ultra Event saga has ended, but unexpectedly there was Rikudo Soji, a promo X-Ray released in late 2022, and immediately became the focus when players realized its potential with Dionysus' avatar, Cavalier Bacchus. Cavalier Bacchus itself already had an effect to send 3 cores from the opposing field to the reserve. Then for each spirit depleted through that effect, it will burn 1 life. Not to mention, it will also send 5 cores from the opposing reserve to the trash, meaning the opponent wouldn't be able to pay the cost for anything. This is where Soji comes in. With his on-deploy effect, he already gives himself 3 cores, which is exactly how many his grand skill needs. His grand skill increases the number of cores sent to the reserve and trash by +2, meaning when applied to Cavalier Bacchus, the player is able to send 5 cores from the opposing field to the reserve, potentially burning 5 lives all at once. This can easily be achieved with the help of Snake Vision, which puts every opposing spirit down to 1 core. It's a card which is normally already in the deck anyway, so it's not a forced addition at all. Soji's on-deploy effect can also summon an evil deity's family spirit without cost, and it just so happens that a major zombie card in Dionysus' group is also in the evil deity family, and that's the Nether 3 Giants Balok Bajil. From my observation, Balok Bajil was never really used in the deck before the appearance of Soji. Unlike the other key cards in the Dionysus deck, Bajil has a mandatory 1 summon effect, meaning that summoning it will allow the opponent to trigger any effects that react against unsummon effects, such as activating a Pharaoh Burst. Also, even though its level 2 to 3 effect can directly destroy a spirit and send an opposing life to the void, the deck already has been focusing on OTK with a single attack from Cavalier Bacchus, so Bajil's effect is pointless most of the time. The deck space is also quite tight, so Bajil is often considered getting excluded from the list. But now, since deploying Soji also means summoning a blocker that can remain on the field for 3 times, Bajil finally gets to see some use. With the lack of groundwork Nessus disruption in the current meta, Dionysus became easier to stand his ground. His grand skill is, in my opinion, a unique gimmick to have, and certainly it has its perks, being able to avoid depletion as well as less core consumption than the other purple decks. However, if it ever really faces any groundwork Nessus disruption or just counters in general, it also makes the games more challenging, and it's something I like to experience in games, because I feel it makes the games more interesting than just me obviously oppressing the opponent. Sure, I can always just pull in Nether Guardian Knight for protection, but as of now, my list doesn't have enough space for it, and in the cases which I don't need the protection, which is the case most of the time in the current environment, Nether Guardian Knight will simply break in my hand. And of course, I had to add how cool the arts for the zombie family cards look. The depiction of skeletal beings is on point, and often they're portrayed as giants, adding to the sense of oppression and creepiness. Actually, Balok Bajil especially is one of my most favorite zombie family cards in terms of artwork. It's another reason why I'm interested in the deck even more, after Soji allows me to conveniently use Bajil. And my 6th choice is yet another purple deck. I've always been promoting myself as a yellow player, and most of my competitive decks are red. But here I am with 3 purple decks on the list. The next deck I'm going to talk about is Tsukuyomi, which consists of a rare combination of purple and yellow. Considering the colors which the deck picked up, I think that Tsukuyomi is a very well composed deck. Too well in fact, that it got 1 card limited in the ban list, because too often Tsukuyomi make a first turn kill. Both purple and yellow are colors which can draw an absurd amount. Then there are also the trash manipulation from purple and life manipulation from yellow, creating an interesting cycle of pseudo core boost and resummoning spirits from the trash. With the two techniques combined, the deck can always start off an assault with a small number of spirits, as more can just be summoned during the attacks, while having a fair amount of cost to use as the deck has effects to gain cost from the player's own life. However, that wouldn't put the player much at risk, as being half yellow, the deck always has ways to regain lives, either putting the cost from trash to the life area or straight from void. In my opinion, spam decks in general are very risky to play, because they're often about betting your all and they comply with the phrase offense is the best defense. The tactic often forces me to think precisely on my next actions, and requires me to also consider the options which the opponent may have. Since a spam deck is all about field presence, it will be really terrible for me as the Tsukuyomi player if the opponent, for example, had to face a burst flame. As a spam deck, Tsukuyomi also has very little defense for the sake of game balancing, which means once I miss my lethal, there's a very high chance that I'll get finished the next turn, because my defense would mostly just be the wall spirits which I haven't attacked with yet. Tsukuyomi also has my interest due to my love for yokai in general. I've been a fan of Gekige no Kitaro, a classic yokai anime, ever since childhood, so I think it's really cool to get to play a deck with all these fantastic creatures. My 7th deck on the list is the green-yellow deck, except I can't exactly pinpoint which green-yellow deck. Green and yellow in general has been an interesting combination to have in the game. Or to be fair, any pairs including yellow would be interesting anyway because it's such a rare situation for Bandai to support yellow because they're still having PTSD with Mikafa. There had been a green-yellow deck back in BS21 with the Land Beast deity Behemoth being the main card of the deck, along with the other variants of Behemoth, but it wasn't exactly a popular card, nor did it really get a chance to share space in the meta because everything else was just too much for it to handle. But back to the main point. Obviously, since this is a video for decks in 2022, I'm talking about the most recent green-yellow support, which technically had begun since BS56 released in April 2021, with the support of Blade Insect with some sprinkles of yellow cards on top. However, it wasn't enough since the Blade Insect deck was already doing well enough on its own without the help of most yellow cards. Then Pre-Crow came in BS57.
テレビ東京のアナウンス部にいらっしゃるんですね。
そうなんです。アナウンサーの仕事。
And let's just say I was utterly disappointed. However, things changed when the January 2022 set came with the new Rebirth X-Rare, the Heavenly Kingbird Strelitzia. Strelitzia is a wonderful card for the color combination, being able to draw 2 on summon and add 1 more on attack. Then on the B side, it has core boost as well as Whirlwind 3, plus life burns. It was the key card which green-yellow had been lacking to build around. And certainly being the key spirit of the third protagonist in the Battle Spirits Mirage anime, there were dedicated supports for Strelitzia, but as usual, some players made use of them, some didn't. And also as usual, most of the official support was pretty bad, so to say. So players had been cooking up their own recipes to make use of Strelitzia, and there were actually so many variants is the reason why I said I couldn't pick one in the beginning. The first variant is the most typical green-yellow Astral Blazer deck, in which most cards within the list are using the intended support which the official provides. It's the most standard build for Strelitzia and probably also the easiest to understand how it works. The main strategy is obviously bringing out Strelitzia to end the game with its life burn, but Mandibularis and Black Gallo 10 are often also used as a secondary win condition. The rest of the spirits are usually for more draws and core boost, with some maybe having mirage effects to lock the cores on opposing spirits. Defense cards are still most likely Diamond War Revival or Bloodshed Blade, but since it's partly a yellow deck, Kneel Down Everyone is also often used for a cheaper cost. And the Evil Sacred Beast Chaos Pegasaurus Revival is used to immediately end battles while also recycling spirit cards. The Nessus lineup usually consists of the Green World, the Yellow World, and the Wise World tree Agastya. If a player wishes to go for a Nessus control approach, they may also add in more Nessuses. From the yellow side, the Crown of the Starless Sky, the Destiny Roulette, and the Flowering Yellow Gate for more draws. And then from the green side, the Primeval Seed of Fruits of Life, and the likes of Nessuses which draw on life reduction. The second variant is called Green Yellow Excel, which as the name suggests, focuses on the use of cards with the Excel keyword. For veteran players, they'll probably immediately understand what is included when the deck has green as part of the colors, and uses Excel. You've guessed it, it's the Hylas Beetle and Ragnarok combo. The player will first put Ragnarok Revival onto the remove zone, either through using its Excel effect or other means. Then they will summon Hylas Beetle, which can summon Ragnarok without cost, getting 2 costs from the void, and then through Ragnarok's effect to gain 6 more. What's even better is that since the deck is half yellow, it can also incorporate Delphinute, which on summon allows the player to put up to 3 spirit cards or magic cards onto the remove zone, and then for each card put, draw a card. And then also, if the spirit cards put out have Excel effects, you can activate them without cost as well. The best tactic which the player can do is putting out Ragnarok with Delphinute, activating its Excel effect to exhaust all opposing spirits, then summon Hylas Beetle to summon Ragnarok and gain a total of 8 costs. That's more than enough to summon Strelitzia and end the game. And with this combo, it means the deck can also include a lot more other cards with Excel effects. Not to mention, there's also Loveless Gemini, which was supposedly designed for the Galaxian deck, but due to its multicolor reductions as well as its Astromullet effect and its level 2 effect to swap cards between hand and the remove zone, is also included in the list. With Excel being part of the deck's theme, it also hardly needs to worry about defense cards, as the cards with Excel can also take on that role. Last but not least, and probably my favorite variant out of all 3, is the Green Yellow Good Stuff deck. Unlike the previous 2 variants, this variant, as the name suggests, simply includes everything that's good from the colors green and yellow. However, this is exactly why it's interesting, because it means players can include whatever green or yellow cards they like into the deck. It's a variant which was inspired by the appearance of Strelitzia, but the list don't necessarily include Strelitzia as the main finisher. Obviously, since I pointed this out, it means there's something I like to use in the deck, and that's none other than the perfect green Elsa Forte. I've been a big fan of Aikatsu ever since I got introduced to it by the collaboration between Battle Spirits and Aikatsu, and I was sad that I couldn't find much use with Elsa since even though she was supposed to be a finisher, her effects require some great luck. However, the release of Green Yellow support inspired players to once again try out Elsa, and there have been some successful lists including her. As a matter of fact, Elsa's summon effect proves to be an effective board wipe, and while normally she would be too high cost to be considered, since it's minimum 4 cost to summon her, because the deck is partly green, it means there are enough core boosts to provide for Elsa's summon cost. With supporting cards such as the 4-star Academy and Chaos Pegasaurus, Elsa's summon effect can be reused over and over again. Besides, Elsa can also be a pretty good attacker. Even though her star appeal effect may not always successfully activate, Elsa herself is still a double symbol spirit with a maximum BP of 16,000. If Elsa managed to reduce the opposing life to 3 or less, it allows Strelitzia for an easy kill next, since it can deal a maximum of 3 life burns in one attack. In short, I like green-yellow decks simply for the sake of Elsa Forte, though I suppose Strelitzia is also a pretty cool card.
私の氷はちょっぴりコールド。あなたの悪事を完全ホールド。貴
きたー、さすらいの重力王子ゴールデンライアン、ドッドー、俺のブーツにキスをしな。
Well, I think I talked too much about the last deck, but anyway, the H deck on the list is from the newest set of the year, Tiger and Bunny, and the deck is Blue Rose and Golden Ryan. Honestly, I had absolutely no interest in the set when it was first announced. I literally don't watch shonen genre anime, DC or Marvel, or anything about superheroes in general. And naturally, being an anime about superheroes, Tiger and Bunny didn't interest me at all. I did give it a 3-episode run, mind you. However, when Blue Rose and Golden Ryan was revealed, I was mildly interested in it. Ironically, I did say I'm not particularly excited about meal decks, but Blue Rose and Golden Ryan is that one meal deck from the set. Interestingly, the deck doesn't exactly aim for deck out, but rather it serves as an indirect removal. The deck's color is part white and part blue, with Blue Rose representing white and Golden Ryan representing blue. And the way the deck works is that Blue Rose will send the opposing spirit to the top of the deck, and then Golden Ryan will discard them. It's also the typical blue providing the draws, while white provides the defense. Obviously, if I want the half offensive half defensive tactic, I can just go to play Amaterasu. But just like the green-yellow deck, what I like about Blue Rose and Golden Ryan is the unique color combination. Before the Tiger and Bunny set, white and blue had only been matched up back in the Ultimate era with the buff of Armor Dragon, utilizing the rush mechanic. At this point, when I was still writing this script, I had not fully tested out the deck yet, and I could literally find no winning list online with this deck, so it all depended on my own game experience to judge the deck. And as far as my experience goes, I still have a long way before I can even grasp the playstyle of the deck. Tiger and Bunny decks in general aren't as clear-cut as the contract decks from the main sets. With the introduction of the buddy keyword, the decks focus on affronting multiple times over the same copies of contract cards. That's one difference I'm struggling to get used to. I have to be constantly calculating to make sure that I'm affronting the right copies of Blue Rose or Golden Ryan at the right timing, and I also had to keep an eye on the affront conditions. Even though the cards themselves have a lot of effects to affronts without the soul core, I constantly found myself in the situation where I need the soul core to affront. I tried fixing the problem by including Blue World and White World, but they're not working very well, with either I draw into Blue World too late, or I just never flip with White World because I'm finding troubles to refresh Blue Rose. I suppose I should try increasing the ratios of Hero TV and Bonjour Hero. It doesn't help that the X-Rare has a pretty harsh affront condition for the deck, needing a cost 5 or more spirit, meaning I either have to recycle Soul Core first and wait for another flash timing, or I have to chain the affront for free effect at least twice, which requires me to have at least 3 right cards in the same turn. And that leads me to the next problem. For Blue Rose and Golden Ryan, the hand size will go down fairly quickly. With the deck being half white, draws are already lacking, and honestly it's not helping when blue is all about filtering more than actually increasing hand size. This becomes very difficult for me to actually gather all the pieces to affront everything all in one turn for the kill. Currently, I'm finding no ways to improve that issue, but I may try to add in necessities like Pentagon Stronghold for some passive draws. All in all though, among this list, the deck of Blue Rose and Golden Ryan represents my excitement to explore a playstyle alien to my current experiences. I enjoy finding out the best deck recipe by myself, even though it may take a while. And with a unique playstyle such as Blue Rose and Golden Ryan, I'm sure it'll be quite some time away before I get bored of the deck. The 9th deck on the list is once again another collaboration deck, Gundam 00. This deck really has a lot of meaning to me because it was this deck which led me into the Gundam fandom. I was never really into Gundam when I was small, mainly because mom didn't let me build any models, always saying that there wouldn't be any spaces at home. So I really only picked up the interest again when Battle Spirits announced its first collaboration with Gundam. I found it really cool when the commercials was voiced by the actors of the pilots themselves, listening to their lines full of emotions and clarity. Not to mention, just like how many mecha fans would say, the robots just look goddamn cool, man. Unfortunately, the commercial with the voice actors got removed from the official channel, probably due to copyright, but they still have the one version with the Battle Spirit's own narrator in it. So here's the video which I've kindly put up for you, and I hope you enjoy.
Battle Spirits にガンダムが参戦。機動戦士ガンダムシード、機動戦士ガンダム WO、 機動戦士ガンダムユニコーン、歴代のモビルスーツを多数収録。衝撃のコラボ企画ガンダムコラボスターター3月14日3種同時発売。異なるデッキで自分だけの戦略を探し出せ。さらにガンダムコラボブースター発売。続報を待て。
Hehe, did you like it? The sound effects and the music are just really cool. Bandai never disappoint us with those stuffs. But anyway, that's what first got me to trying out a Gundam deck. Obviously, there were also Unicorn Gundam and Gundam Seed at that time, but I was told that the Double anime was the best one out of the three, which was why I began my Gundam journey with Double first, resulting in my first Gundam deck also being Double O. Despite Double O being mostly a solitude deck, basically lacking the interactions which I like in a game, I never got bored of using it. Maybe I'm just huge sadist and I love making the opponents wait while I boost cost for like 100 times. The initial finisher of the deck, Double Riser, also has one of my most favorite Gundam designs. After finishing the anime, I fell in love with the card even more when I understood the references which the card designers put onto the card. Double Riser being cost 8 can be a reference to how an infinity sign was created when Setina, the pilot, was connecting thoughts with the others around him. The double symbols which the card has are most likely a reference to how Double Riser was made through a combination of two units, Double Gundam and Zero Riser. The 2 or more Gundam requirement refers to the climax battle where Double Riser was fighting alongside Cherubim Gundam and Seraphim Gundam. Arios Gundam isn't included since it was on a solo mission. Then, the putting whole hand onto remove some effect refers to the connection of consciousness between individuals through quantum brainwaves in the series. Don't ask me how that works, but basically it's 2 people understanding each other's thoughts. And finally, the return 3 Gundam to the bottom of the deck effect refers to the number of Double Riser's comrades, them being, as I mentioned before, Cherubim Gundam, Seraphim Gundam, and Arios Gundam. Definitely got a bit off track there, but as the example shows, the card designers really put their thoughts in references, and I really enjoy using cards with such close references. It's as if the Gundam Double story is mixing up with the Battle Spirits lore during the games. I enjoy imagining Double Riser fighting against Siegfried or Zigram Nova. I also enjoy the tension of digging through the deck for my complete pieces. Both the opponent and I know how the double deck works because it's so linear that it basically only has one win condition. And it's up to the opponents to prepare for the final strike while I'm still digging, and on the other hand, I had to be quick enough or find ways to get around the defense. I enjoy thinking outside the box to win the game. So far on this list, I haven't included any red decks, not even a half red deck. There's just something about the color red that doesn't interest me at all. Maybe because most of the decks in this color are just too similar to each other or straightforward, or because I've been using red competitively for such a long time that I've become numb to the color. While I was writing the script, I have been thinking, surely that would be one red deck which I still like playing. And certainly there have been candidates in my head, including New Gundam, Red Control, Superstar, or even any of the half-red Tiger and Bunny decks. I had been telling myself that I had to make a balance and mention at least one red deck, and so, at the end, I decided I still ain't gonna choose any red deck. I'm gonna follow my heart, and here's the final deck on my list for my top 10 decks in 2022. Yuma Roller. Yuma Roller is a deck first introduced in CB14, released in June 2020. By this video standard, it's a very old deck, but it was still used often by the love of Aikatsu fans. For those who didn't know, which is probably most of you since Aikatsu was pretty much an underrated series, both in terms of the anime itself and within Battle Spirits. Yuma Roller features the two main characters, Yuma Nijino and Roller Sakuraba from the Aikatsu Star series. The deck has only one win condition, and is to spam attacks with Rock My Heart called Sakuraba Roller. It's basically like the current Unit 01, but less efficient, I would say. Rock My Heart Roller has two effects, first being the Star Appeal, which makes her unblockable, as well as having immunity to spirits, nexuses, and magic for the whole turn. And the second effect being able to refresh herself by returning another Yume or Roller card from hand or trash to the bottom of the deck. The rest of the deck is all about digging into Roller as soon as possible, as well as providing support to her attacks, like summoning Daylight Festival called Kasumi Mahiru to prevent the opponent from ending the attack step. It's a simple yet effective strategy, and as long as your deck can run faster than the opponent, it's almost a sure win. Yuma Roller received an unofficial support back in October 2021, with BS58 introducing the Brave card, the Water Lily Dragon Spear Trishula, which can draw one from the bottom of the deck on attack. That means that combining with Roller's refresh effect, they form an infinite attack. This also means that the player can save time from stacking Yuma or Roller cards in their hand and trash, because as long as they have the Brave, they just need one copy to keep drawing and returning to the bottom. In fact, this combo was so effective that players would put 3 copies of Roller into Parvati's deck, where Trishula was supposed to be the second win condition of the deck. In February 2022, BSC 49 was released, and producer Sarasvati was introduced. She had the effect to allow Diva family spirits to remain on the field upon being removed, which can cover up for Roller in case she encounters piercing effects or Brave or Ultimate effects. So far, I haven't seen any winning lists including Sarasvati, probably because most players will focus on being quick than setting up an indestructible infinite attack. But I do think Sarasvati can be a pretty solid backup, plus her meal free on deploy from the core charge will always be useful to get a copy of Yuma or Roller out early. However, at the end, I just love to play the deck because I love Yuma and Roller. They were such good characters in the anime that they left some great impressions in my memory. I'm also a sucker for cards featuring anime girls, so it's genuinely enjoyable for me to play a game while staring at some pretty cards. On the other hand, I also love the surprise element which this deck contains, mainly coming from the ignorance of the other players. Even within collaboration-only tournaments, there doesn't seem to be a lot of players who have seen or known about the Yuma Roller deck. There were several times where my opponents were genuinely horrified when they saw me continuously digging through my deck without knowing what I was actually searching for. Even if my opponents knew about the Aikatsu decks, the Yuma Roller deck share a lot of the engine cards with the other Aikatsu decks, so until they saw my X-Rare Roller, they wouldn't know which finisher I was using. I always felt accomplished whenever I managed to surprise my opponent, or simply when I could win a game with a fairly obscure deck. And that's my top 10 Battle Spirits decks in 2022. Honestly, it had been really hard to pick out the decks, not because there were too many choices, but rather there were too few choices for me. If you haven't noticed already, there were almost no contract decks in the list, despite 2022 being their debut year. Just to clarify, I don't dislike the mechanic. In fact, I think it's a very interesting addition to the game, since it really changed the playstyle of the new decks from the previous ones. However, what I don't like is that the game has basically converted back to the stage where everything's about racing to finish. Not to mention, a lot of the endgame methods leave little to no space for counters. For example, Glow Kaiser and Glow Lampo can straight up deal 2 lives on attack, and Gabulu Shak and Princess Faniel just straight up lock your hand. They leave almost no space for any kind of control decks, unless they directly counter the contract decks. But that's another topic for another potential video, who knows. Despite my complaints, as a veteran Battle Spirits player, I still thoroughly enjoy this new era. Bandai has been constantly surprising us, no matter if it's a new Switch game, a new mechanic, a new collaboration, or heck, even a new sister game. Even though I still haven't fully enjoyed all the things from last year, I'm already looking forward to what they'll bring this year. Hopefully you'll all enjoy my choices of decks, and I wish that my descriptions of them encourage you to try them out. Let me know in the comment below what your top 10 in 2022 is, or even your own top 10 list. And finally, just as all YouTubers say, if you like the video, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Since I only just started and I have my own life to deal with, I can't guarantee when my next video will be, but hopefully I won't be slacking off and it will be soon. See ya!